Ladies and gentlemen, my gut sense tells me that you have a lot to ask and comment on. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to ask my panelists to please forgive me, is that we're going to pivot in the flow. And we're going to try and keep it robust and short, and then I want to open up the conversation as quickly as possible to get some questions and comments. And when we get to that point, if I'm going to also request of us to be sharp and concise in our questions so that we can get as many voices in as possible. Thank you so much. So let's get into it. Ezekiel, let me start off with you right at the end. And the question that I'm going to put to you is somewhat different to what we prepared, but what is your gut reaction to what you've heard? Abeba has said that not all AI is bad, but that some AI is good. In your work, you interrogate the ethics of AI. What's your reaction to what you've just heard?
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, there is this popular saying that came to mind, stating that artificial intelligence is never neutral. So artificial intelligence is precisely the crystallizations of the visions of people who are developing it.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you want to think critically or ethically about artificial intelligence, we also have to think critically about the vision of people who are developing the technology.
Yeah.
And I will, with your permission, share a short story with the audience. You know, in 2020 and 2021, in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, the government of Togo, in collaboration with some research partners, came out with this extraordinary, the first of its kind strategy of providing emergency fund to people in extreme need.
Yeah.
And the idea of this strategy was precisely to, first of all, prioritize area of poverty, and in this area of poverty, to prioritize people in extreme need. But how is it possible to proceed with this prioritization if we don't have effective data?
Yeah.
Knowing full well that the last census handled by the government of Togo was in 2011. And here comes the importance of the machine learning approach. So the researchers, what they did was precisely to analyze data coming from satellite imagery. And by using this data, they trained the algorithm to be able to map the area of poverty. And when we have succeeded in mapping the area of poverty, now we need to find people in extreme need. And here again, we use data coming from the use of mobile phone in order to target these people in extreme need. And the program succeeded in helping something like 57,000 people in extreme need during the COVID crisis. So I really love this story because it shows two things. First of all the benefit, the potential impact of the use of machine learning or artificial intelligence in the process, the idea of giving, such as the direct contact, such as the improvement, the efficiency, and the impact measurement. But also, it shows when the data is well used, going from the quality of the collection to the quality of the exploitation, we can have positive story. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that story. And I'm going to just follow up with something very quickly, Ezekiel. One of the views is that AI could be used in the philanthropic space, and I think it aligns with your story, to be more proactive and less reactive. What would need to be true in terms of the guardrails to make that a positive?
Yes, in fact, it's typically linked to this predictive logic of artificial intelligence. And of course, in talking about the logic of prediction in artificial intelligence, we can mention a various of fields, but I will here limit myself to the prevention of natural disasters and then the quality of education. Nowadays, artificial intelligence is able, of course, through the analysis, the qualitative analysis of data, such as atmospheric data, such as weather patterns, to predict likelihood natural disasters such as hurricane or earthquake. And by doing that, we can also predict the potential communities at risk,
right,
in order to anticipate the process of warning and then the process of helping.
Yeah.
This is the the potential impact of artificial intelligence in the field of the prevention of natural disasters.
Yeah.
But also in the field of education. Nowadays, when we are talking about the impact of artificial intelligence, one of the fields that we're going to be disturbed by it is probably the workforce. And the skills that we have nowadays seems to be irrelevant in the next 10 or 20 days, or 20 years, I mean. So there is also a potential for artificial intelligence to analyze, to map this potential futuristic environment of work, and then to give enforcement, empowerment to philanthropic organizations in order for them to anticipate these potential skills to come, and then to educate the population in order to master these skills.
And of course, as you respond to that, I saw a lot of people taking out their phones when Beba was talking about some of the recommendations and things we need to keep our eye on to make sure that the AI is good. And I think a lot of that floods to the surface as you respond to that. Diane, let me come to you. Firmly in the space of robotics, firmly in the space of technology, when you engage with this presentation, can you share a little bit with us about how is Zimbabwean Flying Labs managing the potential negatives of robotics, AI in your work?
Thank you for the question, Nozipo.
Yes.
Okay, I think for us...
Can we push to a little bit from the back, please, if possible?
Okay, I think for us, it's really about engaging...
Oh, can I get a second microphone? I'm just worried the people at the back maybe can't hear. Can I get the handout? Thank you very much.
I can lift it up.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Go for it.
Okay. All right. So, at Zimbabwe Flying Labs, we are part of a network of local expertise around Africa and around the world who are doing drones for good. So what we found is, the point is to transform the future of work. That's what we want to do. But what we have found, there's so many limitations within the drone space. What a manufacturer would say, like a flight time will be like 20 minutes. On the ground, it'll be 15 minutes. So there's a lot of, we are bridging the education part and reducing the expectations of what the technology can do, and being practical and demonstrating that, yes, you want to use drones for agriculture, but this is how much how effective it will be. You still need people to help you analyze the data once you have outputted it. So I think it's the knowledge gap. That's what we are really working on in the field. And those are the challenges that we faced. That expectation is so high, and it kind of brings them down to earth when we interact with people, but they're still appreciative and want to have this technology in their hands.
So your title, Diane, speaks to leading community engagement. Again, I go back to Abeba's slides, who talks about the use of technology having to be rooted in what the community needs. How do you make sure that you actually live up to your title and that the community is centered around the technology and the AI and the robotics that you deploy?
So what we do is more community engagement as we are rolling out the different programs.
Yeah.
So for example, you can be in a community that wants to do a map of an area we want the community to be involved in the process of identifying areas where there's flood risk. So you use drones to take a picture of the area. You bring the community together and they're able to identify, like, oh, by the way, this is where Mr. John lives. This is where the river was 10 years ago. So there is that community involvement because there is a map that's being created, which is an aerial vision of the area. And they're able to be actively participate and actively involved in the solutions that you bring. So it's a great tool where you are able to bring in the community to be part of it.
Fantastic. So Wanjiku, let me jump from Diana, let me jump to you. again, I come back to the area of work that you're in, and that is Microsoft Tech for Social Impact. I'm a little bit afraid to even say it now, you know, after what Abeba had shared with us. But maybe just start off with, what does that mean in terms of your work? What do you do? How do you leverage technology for social impact?
Okay, thanks for the question, and it's difficult being part of the panel after Dr. Beba's presentation, but I'm glad that picture was painted quite well. So as mentioned, I come from the Microsoft Philanthropies, which was set up a while back in the 80s to support Microsoft, you know, penetrate and address globally complex challenges. But over the past 7 years, they realized tech is actually in itself. It's not just about the grant giving or financial support that they could give, but tech in itself could be a powerful force in supporting a lot of the globally complex challenges that nonprofits and the developmental world addresses. So 7 years ago, that was set up to see how our technology can be leveraged by nonprofits and, you know, the developmental specialists in addressing how they have greater impact. And we came, the Microsoft Tech for Social Impact came onto the continent about 3 years ago, and that's the work we've been doing. And I think first, the challenge in adoption of technology, as Ezekiel shared, is about, you know, who is actually the player who's developing this. It's based on their intention around it. And it was realized that the tech adoption is very low in the developmental space. So how can we better address it? By creating a unit that will drive that. For one, of course, the cost of technology is quite high, and the cost of technology such as artificial intelligence can be very limiting on who adopts it. So how can we create, you know, grants, technology grants that can be adopted in the nonprofit sector? So that was the first initiative that was done, where we give technology grants to nonprofits across the globe, including Africa, you know, and see how they can use it to create a greater impact space. And we've seen the adoption growing significantly on the continent over the past 7 years. And we, you know, traditionally you not see a player such as ourselves in such a conference. But we try to, you know, penetrate this and see, you know, how better can we understand the needs and how better can we address them. So affordability of the technology is one of them. Also, there's a big need around skilling initiatives around technology. What can we do around skilling? If maybe I ask the room, how many people are technology, who have a technology background as developmental specialists? We'll find it's a very small number. So what more can we do in ensuring that the skills, technology skills, are adopted in the field? So we have a lot of certifications and digital skilling methods, because digital skilling enables skill, you know, over in-person skilling. So we have a lot of digital skilling initiatives that we have actually developed the content for, meaning that we are adopting the highest level of the technology we ourselves are creating. So that's another initiative. Of course, connectivity is also a big challenge also across the world. So how can we better improve connectivity, especially in remote areas? So we have programs that we are running around connectivity and trying to address the challenges through, you know, airband initiatives, through, you know, special frequencies in remote areas that can be cheaply, you know, adopted, rather than the high cost fiber initiatives that are already there. So those are some of the initiatives we've done to ensure that it's adopted better, specifically in the space of AI. Of course, it's the skilling that is there, but also use of other energy sources rather than the ones that, you know, have not been adopted in certain areas. Green energy, you know, we've seen the announcement of data centers in Africa created around hydroelectric power that results in less pollution and less carbon emissions. So those are the kinds of initiatives we are trying to drive, and of course we are on the ground trying to get feedback from you to see how better we can continue running those programs.
So let me then just tag on one question for you, Wanjiku, on the back of that. One of the other promises of using big data is that it's going to help us to improve our impact assessment, it's going to help with the monitoring and the evaluation, and it's going to put in our hands data that gives us a better sense of whether we're having an impact or not. Can you talk to us a little bit about how are you thinking as Microsoft Tech that's focused on social impact, how are you using AI and other forms of technology like big data to get a better sense of the impact that you're making?
I think big data, as mentioned, is due to the influx of course, data that is coming from social media, from robotics, from the sources that have come from mobile phones. The penetration of these systems has created a big input and influx of big data, which, if mined, creates a lot of insight that can generate new potential avenues for entrepreneurs and of course, for social impact. So I think the challenge has been we have the record of data, as mentioned before. We are not, some sections of development don't have as much data, or we have not seen as much data coming in as we'd like to create insights that would solve some of the challenges. So before even we apply the big data, it's how do we collect the big data? How can we create systems that digitize the collection of the data? And, the players around that most of the times are government, around collection of the big data. Those are the kinds of players, and sometimes there are restrictions, of course, boundary restrictions, laws and policies in place by countries to collect that data source of agriculture, of healthcare. So it is a challenge because of those boundaries, but of course we try and work with developmental specialists to see how can we help in collection of that big data. And we've seen more and more growth of the big data collection in social impact. And once that is collected, more insights can be created. And the accuracy of that insight, or the accuracy of the prediction of it, is based on just how much it's collected. So even on the continent, now that we have an influx of young people, big data being driven by social media, being driven by systems, I think there's a potential impact on how that can be leveraged by our young population in driving the kind of amount of data that is being collected and getting insights from it.
So before I go to the audience, Oswald, let me bring your voice in, and I want to build on the point that Wanjiku has made, where she talks about sometimes there are boundaries. And I think that's a good thing, because if we bring regulation and policy into the conversation, I would imagine that should be the safeguard that lets us lean towards AI and other tech being good AI and good tech, right? So what I'd love to hear from you is, firstly, your initial reaction to what you've just heard, but do you think policy and regulation are doing its job of ensuring that we're harvesting the best of AI instead of being vulnerable to the worst of AI?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Becky and team for making sure that I'm here. I found my way here by hook and crook. He can tell you. But secondly, I come from an organization that is very much affiliated to Becky and some of the philanthropists in this room. So our chairman and the madam are very much huge contributors to CAPSI and so many other initiatives. So I come from a group that is owned and founded by Strive Masiwa. And being in that group, obviously, there's a lot of stuff that we work on across many industries, and AI being one of them. But I just wanted to contextualize some of the things we do and how they feed into what my sister was sharing earlier on. So basically, our group is built around connectivity. The internet that we managed to secure for this room comes from the organization I work with, and we distribute this internet across the continent, about 22, 23 countries. We've got fiber optic cables around multiple countries, Cape Town to Cairo. I think we've got Sudan into Nigeria and West Africa, and that is something that has enabled Africa to be where it is technologically. Secondly, we work in the space of data centers. I think my sister was very clear to mention that this AI we talk about cannot be possible without connectivity, without data centers. Where does this data reside? There's a big conversation. We can actually have a conference around that, because there's this issue about data ownership and localization. Who owns this data? How are we monetizing it? Where does it sit? I think it's something that all of you guys need to be very passionate about, especially being most of you, I would like to believe, Pan-African people. I think it's something that we need to guard jealously because it's an asset we have and is harnessed in this infrastructure that we built. The next level of where we invest most of our time, which is what I run in the business, is around cloud and cybersecurity. How do we bring this data into this cloud infrastructure they talk about? But cybersecurity being very important. The issue of data, this issue of cybersecurity has become probably the most important thing in this century going forward, because there is so much going on in the cybersecurity space from a perspective of good actors and bad actors, and even on personal data itself.
Yeah.
I think we have had so many scandals that are happening of people hacking into each other's phones, into each other's data, and I know the funders that fund most of you guys in the room, these days from an M&E perspective, they want to understand how you're protecting people's data, because it's a huge risk. So that element is something that we work around. The other element that we've just launched probably in the last 2 hours, if you go online, is we've invested heavily around AI. We've been working for the last 3-4 years around it. Some of the people you talk about, Sam Altman, I've met those guys to talk about this at length in Silicon Valley, all parts of the world. And I can tell you for no money that whether we like it or not, AI is here. And whether we like it or not, it's going to change our lives. Whether we are scared or not scared, it's up to you. I'm not scared about it because there's an opportunity out of it. And I think the question is, how do we unlock that opportunity, especially in an African context? We are not going to be on the front line, that I can tell you, but we don't want to be too far away. All the other technologies that came on this earth, we adopted them after years. HIV itself, the ARVs, they came to Africa after we had all lost family, right?
Yeah.
But this time, this technology, let's all agree that as it comes, we are there. And we need to embrace it from a perspective that internet is there, so we can have access to it. And that's what we champion in our organization. My sister talked about data. I always say, in God we trust, but please bring data. Because everything that we do, I think if it's not anchored by data, I think we might be in a difficult position. And so from where I come from, this is the stuff that we work on. We also work in mobile telephony, we work in many other industries. And one of the things I wanted to advise or share from my learnings on AI and what my sister said, there's one thing about AI, the biggest input to AI is data. And the question is, how do we capture that data? How do we create the data? And what opportunities lie around that? There's a lot of African knowledge that is not being digitized. So we can talk about the Americas, whatever, but in our context, we have so many of our cultural imperatives, our data that we first of all need to protect and digitize so that we can be a partner and player in these ecosystems. The other piece that I'll highlight is there's a workforce conversation that Ezekiel spoke about. The challenges that we have in AI is when we had the Industrial Revolution, it went for the low-end jobs because we mechanized.
Yeah.
AI is going for the white-collar jobs. You guys in the room, you're the ones that are going to be affected by this, whether we like it or not. We're going to be irrelevant very quickly if we're not careful. And it's something that we need to embrace and guard against, because AI is going for those white-collar jobs. The painter, the sweeper, the carpenter is not going to lose his job to AI at this moment in time. But the office person, that academic, is going to find himself trying to work on a research that I'm going to prompt on ChatGPT, and I want to produce a paper around that. So I just wanted to contextualize based on my sister's feedback.
Oswald,
Great presentation.
I want to push you to get to the policy piece because I'm running out of time and I want to go to the audience.
Cool. So
policy and regulation, is it doing its job?
The question that I would ask to the audience of the day is, how many of your regulators do you know who are well aware of AI? That's number one. So the challenge we have, my sister, is we're in an era where technology is moving so fast and our regulators are not moving so fast. So there's going to be challenges, but we're going to succumb them if we invest more in skilling ourselves. So one of the things that we have learned is we operate in a regulated industry. So our regulators guide us, but we also are pushing the boundaries of regulation in all spheres. However, the challenge we have is our regulators today are also confused about this, not only in Africa. Look at America. The White House, the Senate, the Congress is calling meetings every other day to discuss regulation and policy. So no one is a jack of all trades, is the master of this technology as yet, but it's going to evolve. And the other thing about policy that we have noticed is there's a concept of sandboxing policy that we are seeing very popular in many countries, where you go to the regulator, you sit with them, you educate them, you work with them to define the policy. Because they also don't know. And they also are there simply because of historical policy, where they were regulating industries that are dying. So that issue of policy for me is very important. On policy, the biggest issue also is data. That ownership of data, all governments today are blocking data moving outside their borders.
Yeah.
But is it real? Is it sustainable? Is it a competitive edge? We all have to answer that question. So
Yeah.
policy is going to be very key from an ethics perspective, like Ezekiel's area of focus, I think, and it's something we need to look at.
So it's interesting because, of course, I think one of the things that Beba spoke about was the capturing of regulators by big tech. So again, it's lots of question marks. But I want to go to the audience. We've got about okay. So let me stand up. I'm feeling overpowered. So let me just take control. So there's a couple of hands. I'm going to acknowledge them. I've got Prof. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10, Madam in the pink, and that's it. What I'm going to do is I will notate the questions, and you're going to respond in a while, because I think there's going to be a lot of questions coming from you. If I open up that opportunity now, we won't get to the questions. I will notate the questions, and I will facilitate them back to you. So let's give the audience an opportunity to be heard in this moment. So, thank you very much, Prof. Please go ahead. And let's be concise and short in our questions. And just as a little did you know fact, a good question is 10 words long. Prof, go for it.
But my question is to her. So
yes, that's fantastic.
Yesterday I spoke briefly about hallucination. But the real question is, we in Africa, you have just shown us how biased the whole AI is. What do we need to do to make sure that we prevent this? Systematically and practically, and what are the practical suggestions that you can give so that we can go out there and go and implement in making sure that Africa, first, the knowledge is there and information is there that is correct, but also not biased like you've just shown us.
Prof, thank you very much. Short and sweet. Can I have fast feet on the mic? The second is in the second row. Ma'am, your hand right up. Thank you so much. Kindly, please, just quick introduction of yourself.
Hi, Sarah Thompson from Promoting Equality in African Schools. Just a quick question around the ethics of it for organizations in our sector. Using it when we know kind of the exploitation that's happened with collecting the data and tagging it, the environmental impacts, and how we can kind of reconcile that with the opportunity for good.
And you said you're in the education space, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Prof. Ali, go for it.
Okay. I just want to go to basics. When you talk about AI as data classifiers, they are statistical tools. Now, in statistical tools, first thing, you cannot predict 100%. You always have a confidence interval. And you can play, it's very important that the data is representative. If I collect data, whether it's 30 samples or big data on a specific area, it is only indicative for this specific area. End of story. So the problem is not just data. The problem is the data representative or not.
Right.
So I can make conclusions about it. That's first. The second thing is about modeling in general. Models are always wrong because they have boundaries. You cannot replicate the real life. So a model has boundaries, whether it's an exact model, a simulation, whatever it is. Now with the technology, when it improves, technology meaning computer technology, you could increase the boundaries of a model and could have better solutions. But you have to understand there is a limitation. It's not a 100% game. So there is something biased in people in modeling. They call it the planning fallacy. You assuming crank numbers in a machine and it gives you data and now I'm on the right track. No. You really have to understand the underlying assumptions. You have to understand. And even when you get data, the data are not 100% because it is a random process. You cannot forecast a random process 100%. You could have confidence intervals about it. I just wanted to sort of get this into the...
Thank you very much, Prof. So some red flags, some cautions, I'll bring them into the conversation. Madam, please go ahead.
Nachula Wilson with Ashesi University. I had a question on the setting up of data centers in Africa.
Yeah.
For me, it just seems like simple logic for somebody that wants to make money. It just seems very intuitive that there's a big need. You can make a lot of money from setting them up on the continent because there is a huge need. There's nobody else doing it. Why is there nobody setting up data centers on the African continent?
Thank you very much, Oswald. I'll put that to you, so I've noted it for you. Please go ahead, madam.
Nosipo, my question to you, to the panelists, is that we have not even touched the surface of cybercrimes and cyberbullying against women. How do we ensure that we safeguard women against AI, in terms of not only just philanthropy, but just generally? Thank you. And what are the policy, and I want to pivot back to the policy and regulatory compliance. How do we ensure safety and security? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's 5. So I've got 5 more hands can I go to the lady in the pink? I remember her. Let's go to, she's standing up. I'll come back to you, sir, and then we're going to come to some of the hands on this side.
Yes,
go for
lady
it.
From Pussy Power. Hi, my name is Rachel from Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defender, or Pussy Power Movement in Kenya. Yes. So my question to the panelists is around, we are still on our way to decolonize a lot of development and many stuff. How do we decolonize
Sorry,
AI?
ladies and gentlemen, can we give Rachel our attention, please?
Please, yes. How do we decolonize AI? That's one. But also from a human rights defender's perspective and feminists. We have been seeing a lot of us being attacked online, being threatened. How do we ensure that we are also able to protect the lives of defenders as much as we are talking about AI?
Thank you.
The last one.
Rachel, I'm only going to give you 2. Thank you very much. I can't take more. Just behind Rachel, please, and then I need to move to the side of the room, please.
Diane Lindsay, Church World Service, based in Nairobi. Great presentation, great talk. I was curious about the climate change with all the energy required, and if there has been any attempt to look at carbon credits with regard to using the AI and all the energy that it takes and the ramifications of that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. This side of the room, please. Sir, I see you, but I will end with you, I promise. So yes, please keep your hand up, sir. Let's give the gentleman. Thank you very much, sir. Please go for it. Appreciate it. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm Stephen from Nelson Mandela University. Yeah, we see that we are in a kind of a fix because, like he was saying, the policies and regulations are being championed by probably the baby boomers or the millennials against the Gen Z. And I know when the internet came in, there was an outcry. When cell phones came in, there was an outcry. When computers came in, there was an outcry. Now AI is in, there's an outcry. When are people going to stop crying? And what is the solution?
Stephen, thank you very much. Let me work my way forward. There's a gentleman here, please. Sir? Yes, yeah, go for it. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Munashe Masiwa, a final year student at the University of Zimbabwe, studying data science and system. My question to the panelists is, in regards to AI, can a prejudiced judicial system or a human cop be replaced with a same system and algorithm that conceals the same prejudices work here in Africa? That is on a broader canvas of things. The question is, can AI be used in Africa to advance justice, to advance democracy without strong democratic institutions and systems?
Sure, what a brilliant question. I think we're going to end it on there, and please forgive me if I haven't gotten to you. I do apologize. I want to make sure that I give the panelists sufficient time to respond to these questions. And the way I'm going to do it is that I'm going to try to allocate as best as possible so that we tackle everything. But if there's something that you're burning to speak to that I haven't put to you, please, let's also make sure that you get your voice. Abeba, before we went to the audience, you really wanted to jump in and respond to something. So let me give you the opportunity to do that. And maybe then if you can also speak to Professor Radebe's question, where he says, if we know that AI is inherently biased, what systems can we put in place or processes can we put in place to mitigate that bias? How do we shift it towards being good AI from a bias perspective? Go for it. Please use, yeah.
This is the question of hallucination?
Yes.
Okay. So, big companies like OpenAI have spent millions trying to solve the problem of hallucination. Like when ChatGPT was released back in November 2022, hallucinations were immediately obvious. And OpenAI came out and said, oh, no problem, we'll solve this in 6 months. 1 year passed, nothing happened. They created a team, they poured so much resources into it, they couldn't. Now, 2 years later, a year later, they started saying, oh, hallucinations are like fun, humans hallucinate too, blah, blah. They changed the narrative. So what I want to tell you is hallucinations are not a bug, they are a feature of generative systems. As long as generative systems exist, hallucinations will always be part of the system. I don't have time to get into the technical details of why hallucinations can be solved, but the short answer is they are a feature. And as I said, they might be fun if they are giving us like funny images or whatever, but they are not, they have dire consequences when we are deploying these systems into the social world. Can I also touch upon a few of the...
So let's give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, so also in terms of the data and the data representativeness, a lot of the questions, a lot of the feedback I get, especially when I present my work on data set audit, is that, oh, we just need more representative data, better quality data, blah, blah. Yes, that's part of the solution because data is fundamental to AI, as I said. However, as I said, all AI does is model the social world. However, no matter how good quality, no matter how representative, no matter how amazing your data, if the problem you are trying to tackle has political roots, such as like injustice and gender equality and so on, if it has societal complicated rules, as I said, what AI does is simplify the phenomena because it has to be captured in data and be modeled. No matter how great your data, no matter how representative, we can pour all our data we want into the training set for ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, or whatever. That's not going to be any good. The model will still end up doing bad. The model will still end up harming people. If the model with extremely accurate representative data ends up modeling, for example, one of the most problematic areas is building models of human emotion or human criminality. These kind of technologies are deployed in visa application, border control, and so on.
Yeah.
So this is like a debunked pseudoscience. Back in the 60s, 70s, this was declared as pseudoscience. So no matter how good your data, if you are modeling something that has no scientific groundings, you still are doing pseudoscience. Your model is still bullshit.
All right. For those who are tweeting, our hashtag is APC 2024, fifth APC. So let's just put it there. Abeba, thank you. Oswald, let me come to you because now you've collected this BS data. And the question is, from the Madame Formachesi saying, why are people not building more data centers on the continent? And I would imagine that's exactly the gap that you're trying to fill.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that question. So last week on Friday, I think we were in Cape Town just launching an extension of our existing data centers. So we have about 8 active data centers across the continent, and I think about another 10 in the pipeline. The beauty of what we're doing right now is we are building data centers across multiple countries, obviously from a business perspective based on opportunity, number one, based on could be a government policy in a country. If you go to Rwanda right now, you have to keep the data in country, which means we have to double down on the investment. But what I can tell you is if you go on africadatacenters.africa, that's our company for data centers, we have a roadmap of building up to about 100 megawatt capacity of data centers across the continent in the next 36 months. We have launched in Kenya a very big data center on Mombasa Road. We have data centers in Johannesburg. We've got 2 data centers in Joburg, 2 in Cape Town. We've got a data center here in Harare. We've got a data center in Zambia. We are going into Ghana, Morocco. So it's a strategy that we have, Pan-African strategy. One of the things I want to highlight tied to this is the question that was asked about climate.
Yes.
These data centers chow energy. They are guzzlers of energy. But what we have done in our group, we have also invested in renewable energy to power these data centers. We work a lot with Microsoft. We built the first data center for Microsoft in Africa. We're building more for Oracle, Google, and the rest of the guys. And as we do that, we're harnessing renewable energy to be powering these data centers. So solar, wind, hydro, because it's important that we also don't increase the carbon footprint. I like the idea of carbon credits and all of that. There are many innovative youngsters who are building these models of planting trees in Nairobi in exchange for people to put a bit of carbon in the air, and they're coming to us and we're trading that. So it's something that we are heavily involved in, and we really, like I said earlier on, we have to do it. No one else is going to do it for us, and we have to play in this game.
And Oswald, before you come off the microphone, so thank you for dealing with the question on carbon credits as well. I just want to go to Stephen's question. When are people going to stop crying?
You know, I actually typed what he said, because I now have a byline now, right? Because it's very interesting. Anything that has happened in this world, which has been tectonic and dynamic and everything, it always faces resistance. I think we are, sorry to say, creatures of resistance on anything that's new. It's maybe biological, whatever it is. But I do believe that what he said is very true. When the internet came, I was very young, and people never believed it was there for the good. But all of you guys, you run all your operations on the internet. If you're not on the internet, you're going to shut down. COVID really proved that to all of you guys and many other industries. So the crying bit comes from a perspective of fear, in my view. And fear is lack of knowledge sometimes. Like I said, if we continue to skill ourselves, if we invest our time in upskilling and understanding that we have to play the game. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to wait, they're going to bring this AI to us. They're going to take this data back to Europe, wherever it is, where they have capacity, and we're going to be paying for it, yet it's data created here. So we all need to play a part, and let's stop crying. I like my brother, what he said. Because what are we going to benefit from that?
Fantastic. Wanjiku, I'm coming to you next. I'm working my way down. Rachel from Kenya, I believe, said, are we ready to have the conversation about decolonizing AI? And maybe unfairly, I'm putting that question to you, but what are your thoughts on that as the first, and then I'll come to you on the cyber crime question.
Okay, that was an interesting question. And as Oswald just started to share around, in fact, Dr. Bebe mentioned around what modeling has become, and she was very strong around that. And as much as we have to look at it from the data aspect on how we can participate, how we can push out our own content so that it's representative, and it's a big part around decolonization. It's also skilling to ensure that even as we are participants of creating content, we are also the scientists defining the models. I think it's very important that we have more and more people becoming data scientists, becoming the people who are actually driving the development of the models themselves. And that both sides of the coin have to be taken into account.
Yeah.
And we are doing more and more. It means we can't shy away from the big tech players. We must seek for representation among them. They are running, they're driving, and they're driven by profit. But that doesn't mean we shy away from them. We have to participate. Get in with, by all means necessary, and change the system when you're inside. We can't, as was mentioned, we can't run away from it. It's coming, and it's coming with those with power. We must take the power ourselves by being the players on both sides of the coin.
So let's add women to that equation, who in their participatory stance sometimes and more disproportionately would become the victims of cybersecurity, cyberbullying, being threatened. So how do we bring a gender lens to that participation?
I think it's a difficult one, but I think there are also a lot of initiatives, skilling initiatives that are very focused on women and people who are not included right now in the technology conversation.
Yeah.
I've had discussions with a lot of community-based organizations which are actually being funded specifically to address the digital skilling literacy gap that is among especially the women. And I think it's very important. When we saw also, I'm from Kenya, so we've seen, of course, the impact of M-Pesa. And it has been driven majorly by also table banking, which is driven by women. And those kinds of initiatives, if they don't go to the core of the community, which is women, we end up not being representative because it's actually above 50% of the population. So a lot of skilling initiatives, I'd encourage the nonprofits that are in the space of digital skilling, please include women in these discussions in a way that is relevant to them. If they're involved in business skills, let's see how digital skilling can be used there.
Yeah.
And please use content that is up to date. I've also identified there's a lot of skilling that is going on that is not up to date. You know, it's not inclusive of the technology that is happening right now, and it's outdated, and that creates a gap. You know, so let's look for the right content when you're doing the skilling initiatives to include and decolonize the new technologies that are coming in.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Diana, let's move on to you. One of the flags or the red flags that Professor Ali raised from his seat is that reminding us how AI actually works. He says, you know, remember, we go back to basics. We use statistical tools which have to be representative in the first instance, and that modeling has its limitations. And the best that we can ever get is a sense of confidence, and that can vary according to a continuum. My question to you is, how do you guys manage to make sure that your samples are as representative as possible and that you can have relatively strong confidence in how you're using robotics and how you're using that asset or product from there on?
Thank you so much for the question. I think it's the integrity of the data.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. So because we are gathering images from an aerial perspective, it's like pure data. But the question is, what are the outputs and how is it being interpreted? So for us, it's how we have managed to do that is, again, community engagement. What are the outputs that you are planning to get out of this? Is it just boundary lines that you're going to get from the outputs that you have from collecting data from a drone? Or is it, it could be different data sets that you can ask for. But I think it's the involvement in being clear with the outputs so that you're able to actually get the right, clear, concise data that you need.
And representative data.
Exactly, representative data that you need.
I think that's an excellent response to that. So Ezekiel, you get to take us home. I want to bring the last two questions to you. They're both ethics questions. Let's start with the first one. I think it was Sarah at the back who said, in the education space, given some of the issues that Abeba raised for us, how do we reconcile AI so that ethically it still serves education and it does good?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think the most important thing when we are talking about ethics is to consider it as a tool to build trust in the community form in the precise area of education as we are talking about that area. So one of the strategies, to be very fast and precise on it, one of the strategies used in order to guarantee that trust in the context of the use of AI is precisely to integrate in this body what we call a committee of ethics of what is now known as the chief ethics officer, right? And this chief ethics officer or the committee of ethics should develop 4 types of relationship. First of all, a relationship or a critical relationship with the team, the technical team that is supposed to implement AI in the process of the organization.
Yeah.
A critical relationship with the body of governance of the organization in order to hold the body accountable. A representative relationship with all the people whose data are used in order to train the algorithm or the artificial intelligence who is integrated in the organization.
Yeah.
And then a self-critic relationship with his own self in order to think critically and to perpetually illuminate his way, his movement, and etc. Yes.
What I love about that response is you're giving us a very practical way in which we can begin to make sure that ethics is mainstreamed in the work of AI. Final question, and I missed the gentleman's name, but I loved the question. How might we use, Ezekiel, AI to advance justice and to advance democracy? And he used the example of, can we replace a human cop with some form of AI that doesn't have prejudice? But he says he throws in a complication, and he says, can we do that in the absence of strong institutions?
And thank you very much for that question, sir. I think I will come back to my introductory words, the popular saying stating that AI is not good, not bad, not neutral. AI is the crystallizations of the vision of people who are developing the technology, and even most importantly, the repercussion of the institution, the context in which AI is deeply rooted. Therefore, if we want to think about AI as a tool to advance social justice, we first of all have to think critically about the quality of the institutions in which AI is deeply rooted. And when I'm talking about institutions, I'm talking about political institutions, economic institutions, and social institutions. Therefore, we shouldn't think about AI as a tool to advance social justice, but let us think as a tool to proceed. First of all, interrogating the quality of the institutions, the quality of the context in which AI is developed.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I know I'm in trouble with a lot of people, those who didn't get to ask questions, panelists who probably wanted to say more, but we have caught up on time, and I want to keep that because I know we've got site visits in the afternoon that we can't compromise. So I'm going to ask you to do me this favor, to give my panelists and our keynote speaker a massive, massive round of applause. Thank you very, very much.